Urban Legends from Around the World Episode 4, The Black-Eyed Children. Hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of our series on urban legends from around the world. Today, we'll explore one of the most unsettling and eerie legends, the Black-Eyed Children. This tale has been whispered about for years, sending shivers down the spines of those who hear it. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be spooked by this chilling legend. Urban legends are a fascinating part of modern folklore. They are stories passed down through generations, often containing a mix of truth, fiction, and moral lessons. These tales capture our imagination, playing on our fears and the unknown. In this series, we will explore some of the most intriguing and spine-chilling urban legends from around the world. Our journey continues with the haunting tale of the Black-Eyed Children. Chapter 1: The Origin of the Black-Eyed Children. The legend of the Black-Eyed Children began to circulate in the late 1990s, primarily through internet forums and personal accounts. These children are typically described as having pale skin, lifeless black eyes, and an unsettling presence. They often appear in pairs and are known for their unnerving behavior, such as knocking on doors late at night and asking to be let in. One of the first known accounts was shared by a Texas reporter named Brian Bethel in 1996. Bethel recounted an encounter with two black-eyed children who approached his car and asked for a ride. He described feeling an overwhelming sense of dread and fear, prompting him to drive away as quickly as possible. Since then, numerous reports of similar encounters have surfaced, each one more disturbing than the last. The black-eyed children are often associated with supernatural and extraterrestrial phenomena, though their true origin remains a mystery. Chapter 2: The Legend Spreads. As the legend of the Black-Eyed Children spread, so did the stories of their terrifying encounters. People from all over the world began to share their experiences, each one echoing the same sense of dread and fear. The children were often described as appearing at night, knocking on doors or windows, and asking to be let in. Those who encountered them reported feeling an intense and inexplicable fear, as well as a compulsion to obey the children's requests. One chilling account involved a woman named Jane, who was home alone one stormy night. She heard a knock at the door and opened it to find two children standing on her porch. They asked to use the phone, their voices flat and emotionless. Jane felt a wave of terror wash over her and slammed the door shut. Through the peephole, she saw the children's black eyes staring back at her, unblinking and soulless. These encounters often left the witnesses shaken and deeply disturbed, leading many to believe that the black-eyed children were not of this world. Theories about their origin ranged from demonic entities to alien hybrids, but no definitive explanation has ever been found. Chapter 3: The Dare. Our story begins with a group of friends who decide to investigate the legend of the Black-Eyed Children. It was a rainy autumn evening, and the group had gathered at Emily's house for a sleepover. They were sitting around the living room, sharing scary stories, when Emily's cousin, David, mentioned the Black-Eyed Children. "I dare you to go outside and call for the Black-Eyed Children," David said, his voice filled with mischief. Emily rolled her eyes. "There's no such thing as the Black-Eyed Children," she said. "It's just a story." But David was insistent. "If you're so sure, then it shouldn't be a problem, right?" Reluctantly, Emily and her friends agreed to the dare. Armed with flashlights and umbrellas, they stepped outside into the rain. The wind howled through the trees, and the air felt charged with electricity. "Black-eyed children, we dare you to come," Emily called out into the night, her voice trembling slightly. At first, there was nothing but the sound of the rain and the wind. The group began to relax, laughing nervously at their own fear. But then, they heard it, a soft, persistent knock coming from the front door of the house. Chapter 4: The Encounter. The group froze, their eyes wide with fear. Emily turned towards the house, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Who's there?" she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. There was no answer, just the relentless knocking. David, trying to act brave, walked up to the door and peered through the peephole. His face went pale, and he stumbled back, his voice shaking. "It's them," he whispered. "The black-eyed children." Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she slowly approached the door. She looked through the peephole and saw two children standing on the porch, their eyes completely black and soulless. They were drenched from the rain, but they stood unnaturally still, their faces expressionless. "Please let us in," one of the children said, their voice flat and devoid of emotion. "We need to use the phone." Emily felt a wave of terror wash over her. Every instinct told her to open the door, but she resisted, backing away slowly. "We can't let them in," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to leave. Now." The group hurried back outside, the fear driving them away from the house. As they ran through the rain, they heard the children's voices following them, growing louder and more insistent. "Please let us in. We need your help." Chapter 5: The Aftermath. The group didn't stop running until they reached the edge of the woods, where they finally caught their breath. They looked back towards the house, but the black-eyed children were nowhere to be seen. "What were those things?" Sarah, one of Emily's friends, asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Emily replied. "But we need to stay away from them." Over the next few days, the group tried to move on from the encounter, but the memory of those soulless black eyes haunted them. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, and strange things began to happen. Emily's phone would ring in the middle of the night, but there was no one on the other end. David found scratches on his window, as if someone had been trying to get in. Desperate for answers, Emily turned to the internet, reading every account she could find about the black-eyed children. The stories were all eerily similar, and they all carried the same warning: never let them in. Chapter 6: The Research. Determined to find a way to protect themselves, Emily and her friends began researching the legend of the black-eyed children in earnest. They spent hours in the library, poring over old books and newspapers. They discovered that the legend had roots in various cultures, with similar entities appearing in folklore around the world. One theory suggested that the black-eyed children were demonic entities, seeking to steal the souls of those who let them in. Another theory proposed that they were alien hybrids, the result of sinister experiments. Some even believed that they were ghosts of children who had died tragically and were now seeking revenge. The group also found accounts of people who had survived encounters with the black-eyed children. These stories offered some hope, but they also reinforced the importance of never letting the children inside. Chapter 7: The Plan. With the knowledge they had gained, Emily and her friends devised a plan to protect themselves from the black-eyed children. They gathered supplies: salt, which was said to ward off evil spirits; iron, believed to be a powerful protective element; and protective symbols and charms from various cultures. They also set up a surveillance system around Emily's house, hoping to capture any evidence of the children's presence. They knew they couldn't let their guard down, not even for a moment. On the night of their confrontation, the group gathered at Emily's house, their nerves on edge. They spread salt around the doors and windows, placed iron objects at every entrance, and hung protective charms on the walls. They were as prepared as they could be, but the fear still lingered. Chapter 8: The Confrontation. As night fell, the group sat in the living room, watching the surveillance monitors. The rain had started again, tapping against the windows and adding to the tension. For a while, everything was quiet, but then the knocking began. It was soft at first, but it quickly grew louder and more insistent. The group exchanged nervous glances, their eyes fixed on the monitors. On the screen, they saw the black-eyed children standing at the front door, their soulless eyes staring directly at the camera. "Please let us in," the children said in unison, their voices echoing through the house. "We need your help." Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "We can't let them in," she said firmly. "Remember what we learned." The children's knocking grew more frantic, and the group heard scratching at the windows. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread filled the room. "We need to stay strong," David said, his voice trembling. "We can't let them in." Chapter 9: The Evidence. As the night wore on, the black-eyed children's attempts to gain entry became more desperate. They banged on the doors, scratched at the windows, and their voices grew louder and more insistent. "Let us in. We need your help." The group huddled together, trying to block out the sound. Emily checked the monitors again, and to her horror, she saw the children's faces pressed against the windows, their black eyes staring into the house. "We need to capture this," she said, grabbing a camera. "We need proof." She began filming the monitors, capturing the children's eerie presence. The knocking grew louder, shaking the house. Emily's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay focused. Chapter 10: Moving On. As dawn approached, the knocking finally stopped. The air grew warmer, and the sense of dread began to lift. The group cautiously approached the windows and doors, but the black-eyed children were gone. They breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the experience had left them shaken. Emily reviewed the footage, and while the evidence was disturbing, it confirmed that they had faced the black-eyed children and survived. The strange occurrences ceased, and the group slowly began to return to their normal lives. However, they knew that the legend of the black-eyed children was not just a story. It was a warning, and they would never forget the night they came face to face with those soulless black eyes. Urban legends like the black-eyed children tap into our primal fears and our fascination with the supernatural. They remind us that there are still mysteries in the world that cannot be easily explained. As we continue this series, we'll delve deeper into other chilling tales from different parts of the globe, each one more terrifying and intriguing than the last. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of urban legends. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we explore another spine-tingling tale. And remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that could be true.